Welcome to the next project. This is a video about Richlite. In this case, black diamond Richlite. There it is, it's focused. I purchased this board. It's a 2 foot by 2 foot by 1/4 inch thick piece from Richlite. I went on their website, selected the piece I wanted, paid them, they shipped it to my door. I'm going to show you how I'm going to turn this board into 9 fingerboard blanks. And 2 of those blanks I'm going to use as my guinea pigs. I'm going to radius and fret slot one using power tools. And the other one I'm going to radius and fret slot by hand so you can see how it goes. And I can give you a little feedback about my struggles or not. Let's start the next project. Table saw work is done. We have turned one big board into 9 little fingerboard blanks. Everything went well. I used a 24 tooth carbide tip rough saw blade in the table saw. It went through this like nothing. Spit out nice little chips, no smoke, no fire, no screaming children, no barking dogs, nothing. So far, it went well. Let's continue with the next project. Fret slotting on the table saw went well. I used a StewMac. I don't know what the tooth count is on it right offhand. I'll look that up and post it here if I can find it. It was a brand new StewMac blade, so I wasn't testing with an old worn out blade. It did cut very well. I went slow, not to overheat the blade. And I think to get a real good gauge of what damage this Richlite might do to the blade, you probably need to cut half a dozen fingerboards to really know if it would wear the blade out or not. One thing I have heard about the StewMac blade is you can resharpen it. You don't just have to throw it away and buy a new one. So if you know how to sharpen blades, go ahead and do that if it does happen to get dull, or take it to somebody and have it sharpened. So let's move on to hand slotting a fingerboard. Let's continue the next project. Okay, so the 25.5 hand slotted fingerboard is done. That was less than enjoyable. This is some hard stuff. And it also let me know that my poor old fretting saw is on its last leg. The handle kept falling off. But this took me like 40 minutes to slot by hand. That's the longest it's ever taken me to hand slot a fingerboard. Maple and rosewood have always been very good to me, easy to slot. This stuff is hard. So I'm not looking forward to doing the radius by hand on this. I will have to do a little bit of hand radiusing to clean up the one I'm going to machine, but we'll cover that when we get to it. So let's continue the next project. Hand sanding, wow, is this difficult? If you have a weekend to spend, you can try hand sanding. This, you can see there's still a high spot all the way down the middle. This is an hour and about 10 minutes worth of sanding. Started out with 100 grit because that's all I could find, which I knew was too fine of grit. Then I found some 60 grit, which is really not great paper, but the neat thing I could tell about the 60 grit paper is as I was sanding this, it was pulling the grit off of the paper. This is tough stuff. So, and this is not even close to being done. I probably have another 45 minutes just to get it to where I have a nice thin center crown. Then I could go to finer papers. So I'm throwing in the towel on this one. I forfeit the rest of this race. So now I'm gonna finish this one with power tools. Hopefully that'll go better. And we'll go from there. So in the past I had used Richlite before, and I had purchased pre-slotted and pre-crowned boards, and I'm sure glad I did. I didn't really think it was all that bad to use before, but all I did is clean up the edges and glue it on. I've got a gazillion dollars worth of effort in this right now. So let's get to the rest of the next project.
The radiusing is done. I ended up using power tools to do the radiusing of both of these blanks after we determined that hand sanding is just a complete waste of time on Richlite. Use your time more wisely. Go to the dentist, go buy a used car, anything that's more pleasurable than hand sanding this. Once I gave up on the hand sanding, I went and used my router to create radius on both boards. After that, I did follow that up with some hand sanding on my long beam. I went 100, 180, 220, 320, 400, and 600 grit papers just to remove router swirl marks that weren't bad, but you can see them. So 600 grit looks like that. And then on the other board that was going to be my hand process board, I ended up going on up to 2000 grit paper by hand and gave it some compound buffing just to see if this would take a polish at all. And it gives a nice matte sheen. I think you'd probably be just as well off going up to like a 6000 grit paper by hand to get this same sheen without attempting to use any polishing compound. I don't think the polishing compound did much. So now I need to cut the shape on one of these and scuff up the back surface, roughen it up a bit, and I'm going to glue this onto a rough neck blank that I have ready to go. So we'll see that part of the process. So let's continue with the next project.
The clamp up process is going pretty well. I have the fingerboard, a nut slot cut into it, the fingerboard cut to length, fingerboard also cut to width to match the neck that I am mating it to. I sanded the back of the neck with 80 grit paper, cleaned it up with acetone, did the same to the mating surface of the neck, I sanded it good, cleaned it up, installed a truss rod. The biggest thing I forgot to do is after I taped off everything else and got it all aligned and got it on, right as I was sticking the fingerboard on the neck, I was like, I was going to tape off the fingerboard too to keep any messy epoxy mess off the fingerboard. I forgot to do it. But, once I get started, I can't stop. So I just stuck it on and I'll clean it up when I pull the rubber band clamping system off the neck. It's got a working time of 45 minutes and I can pull the rubber band off in probably 24 hours, but I'm just going to put it aside and we will come back and revisit what's going on in about 72 hours. While I was in the spirit of gluing things together, I took the other fingerboard that I had prepped and glued it to a fake neck blank. This is just pine. I sanded the back of the fingerboard and the top of the neck with 100 grit paper, cleaned them both up with acetone, and used original tight bond to glue these two together and clamped it with the rubber band clamping method that I used on both necks in this case. Now I'm going to clean up the edges of this with my router and get this one ready to have nickel fret wire hammered in. So let's continue with the next project. Time to do a little bit of fret work. We're going to do two different options. One is going to be nickel silver. We're going to hammer those in, just a few frets, into the fake neck that he's working on over there. I'm going to hammer them in, pull them out, hammer them in, pull them out a few times just to see how the fret slots hold up on this Richlite. And the other neck, the real neck, the one toward the back, is going to get stainless steel frets pressed in using some of our custom cheap tools like those nippers that I did a video on a month or so ago. So let's start the next project. We're finally at the end of this video, and I have done my 2 test boards. One is truly a test. I just hammered in a few frets, pulled them out, hammered in, pulled them out, hammered in, pulled them out a number of times just to see how much abuse and reuse this material can take, and I wouldn't worry about ever having to have a fret fall out, or if it had to be refretted, it'll be really easy. As far as using glue to put the frets in, I don't know. For this example, these frets went in so tight that I don't think glue is necessary. There's going to be almost no void to fill, and glue is not going to penetrate into any end grain in the material because it's Richlite and it doesn't have end grain. It is 60% wood pulp, paper pulp, and 40% resin. So it's a durable material. It's supposed to be very stable, won't shrink in any direction. Heat and moisture don't matter. It doesn't care. Frets are going to go in, stay in. You shouldn't have any frets problem. The other neck, which is going to be an official real neck someday, I pressed in stainless steel frets. Again, it went super easily. I did put a drop of super glue in each slot before pressing the frets in, and as you may have noticed in the video, as soon as I put it in, the super glue went like this. It wicked across the whole width of the slot. So it takes like 1 drop per slot. There's no end grain again, so the super glue has no place to go. You press a fret in and some of the super glue will be coming out the ends or gluing your fingers to the board, which again, is pretty easy to clean up. Acetone right on the end, it comes right off. This has been a very good learning experience. I have used Richlite twice in the past. I had purchased some pre-rated, pre-slotted boards, which I'm not even sure where you get them anymore. And I just glued them on with some different epoxy, and that's been 5 or 6 years ago. And they're still together as far as I know. Never heard any complaints. Stainless steel frets, really I don't see a whole lot of issue. I did struggle a little bit in the past when I used them, but I'd used a different method for cutting and prepping my frets to press in. Or actually I hammered them in then too. These are pressed in. This pressing in is the way to go if you can. If you have to hammer in, you know, it can be done. It's a little bit more work. Anyway, my takeaway is this stuff is great if you can buy pre-slotted, pre-radiused fingerboard. If you have to slot it and fret it yourself, I hope you have some power tools to do that. Otherwise, it's going to be a lot of work. Durability-wise, I think this will outlast any of us. So I think whenever I use Richlite, I will just go ahead and put stainless frets in it. Standard. That's the low end right there. Stainless frets are standard in Richlite. If you put nickel frets in, you can refret it, but why would you want to bother unless you want to change your height or width of your frets or something like that. But that's going to be up to your situation. Anyway, I like this stuff. I'm going to continue using it. I hope you found this video interesting, entertaining, informative, or maybe it just gave you something to have a donut and drink coffee to. That's okay too. Anyway, hit the thumbs up button because that means something. Ring the bell because that does something too. Leave some comments. I love hearing from you guys and ladies. All around the world, let me know what you're up to, whether you're fixing the kitchen sink or changing the tires on the car, building a guitar or a mandolin or a violin or bongos. That'd be cool too. Be safe and take care, and I got to get back to work on a project that was due about a year ago. Take care.